This is the FYI on Youth Ministry, a youth ministry podcast from the Fuller Youth Institute. This season, we have something a little different for you. We're bringing you audio versions of some of our favorite FYI blog posts. So, enjoy hearing a short behind-the-scenes introduction and the article read by the authors. In this episode, Giovanny Panginda will share his article, Models Matter: Key Insights on Character-Forming Discipleship with Teenagers. But first, let's hear what young people have to say about today's topic.
Who is someone that you know personally that you see as a role model and why?
Definitely Amanda, my youth leader. She purposefully loves and cares for people, and she sees people, and she intentionally makes those connections. But then she's also she takes care of her own relationship with God too. And I think those are two very important things that need to go hand in hand.
Probably my dad, because he's super patient. He's one of the most patient people I know. And he's able to if somebody's ever in an argument or something and they go to him for advice, he's able to kind of see things from an outside perspective and see both sides of the argument. He's able to give people the benefit of the doubt. He's really slow to anger.
Hello listeners, my name is Giovanny Panginda and I am the social media lead at the Fuller Youth Institute. When I'm not working at FYI, I'm actually a youth pastor at 3 Indonesian American sister churches. Have you met an Indonesian American before? There aren't too many of us. We make up about 0.35% of the US population. So I think meeting an Indonesian American is a gift because we've got some beautiful culture and especially food for you to enjoy. One of the reasons why I wanted to write this article was taking a look back at my own experience in youth ministry. I wanted to be the youth pastor that I didn't have growing up. That's right. I actually didn't grow up with youth pastors. I grew up with a lot of mentors and big brothers and big sisters, so to speak. So not really a youth pastor. But the way they shared their lives with me was so impactful, just as much as I think youth pastors are impactful to their students. And so that's the kind of youth pastor I want to be. I want to be impactful. I want to be able to help my students, become better sons and daughters of God, and for them to grow spiritually, as well as mentally and socially and relationally too. While I was writing this article, I was thinking about something one of my male students said, especially about Instagram and working out. And I love working out, but I also, I'm not gonna lie, I felt the pain that he felt in terms of him comparing himself to the images of fit people on Instagram. And I'm the same way too. I look at these images and sometimes I come down hard on myself because I don't look a certain way. And when I realized that, I decided okay, we need to comment on this. We need to be able to talk about this, because this is not the right model, not just for him, but for me. And I wanted my students to have better models, of what it looks like to be a Christian. My hope after you read or listen to this article is that it inspires you to realize that you too are a model. You are a model to someone else. They see your actions, they see or they hear your words, and you actually can influence other people. And the question is, Will you be a model for good change or not? And my hope is that you do become a good model for good change. Someone that will inspire the next generation to do better. Well, without further ado, let's jump into the article. It's titled Models Matter: Key Insights on Character Forming Discipleship with Teenagers. I spent hours working on a sermon I'd be delivering as a guest speaker for the winter retreat. I meditated on a Bible passage, journaled my thoughts, and prayed for guidance. My eyes grew tired from scouring the internet for relatable examples and illustrations. I attempted to balance comedic and serious stories, so much so that I even worked on my delivery and timing. But none of that turned out to be what was most important to the students. By the end of that sermon, which was about Christ and identity, the students learned that Christ can and does love them for who they are. But what they talk about to this day is my ugly crying, my tragic story of grief, my act of vulnerability, how I felt free to express pain, and how it made them reflect on their own honest journey toward faith and identity. Afterwards, several students confided in me. One student confessed that they struggled with an eating disorder. Another student said, "I struggle with body image." Another lamented, saying,
"When I'm at the gym, I don't think I'm ever strong or muscular enough."
One male student even said,
"This is the first time I have ever heard a male pastor cry. I think I need to see that in real life. That pastors are people too, and that us guys, especially Asian American guys, have emotions, and it's okay to show them."
Later that evening, that same student was vulnerable in front of his male friends, confessing his own identity struggles. As leaders, we might find ourselves investing so much time on our sermons that we forget we are often our students' primary models of learning. Don't get me wrong, preaching and teaching are very important, but to our students, the way we live our lives is the greatest sermon we will ever preach, because our students are paying close attention to how we talk, what we share, how we react, and especially how we treat others. In other words, what we do as leaders is often more important than what we say. Our Gen Z students can spot and reject a photoshopped, filtered leadership. They want genuine models. In matters where trust is involved, what we model and what we say have to align and match up. Students want models who are honest about their own faith journeys that are often messy and tussled around. They want models who are open about struggles and doubts, because they suspect these are the most human things to do in front of a perfect God. So, what does this mean for how we think about discipleship? Since we know that young people will be influenced by models, our task is not to change that reality, but to help them identify and evaluate whose actions are influencing theirs. We must also recognize ourselves as models. This means that prioritizing our own spiritual formation impacts our students more than we may realize. Models are important for developing character and virtue in students. At FYI, we know this because we conducted research on character development and cultivating virtues. What we mean by this is that we wanted to learn about the internal process of forming virtues, or the characteristics required to follow Jesus well. Characteristics such as compassion, hope, forgiveness, perseverance, humility, love, and gratitude. One of the things we learned is that when it comes to developing character, young people are frequently influenced by models that help them understand and uncover their inner desires. Researcher Luke Burgess calls this mimetic desire. Mimetic desire is the tendency for us to imitate or copy the desires of others. This means that other people act as models or mediators, influencing our perception of what is desirable. This is why we are influenced by what we see in others and what they value or desire, and why we might potentially imitate others. I've seen this play out in real life. At my church, we have a youth choir. Unfortunately, no one wanted to sign up for it. But as soon as Michelle, a compassionate and influential student, talked about joining the choir and actually did, more students decided to join. Burgess believes there are three kinds of desire mediators: internal, external, and a mix of both. Although external mediators have a wide reach, internal mediators are the most impactful in our lives. The first kind of mediators are internal mediators. For our students, they are people like friends, family, youth workers, and anyone with whom they have direct contact and interact with in some way. Michelle was an internal mediator to the other students at my church. The second kind of mediators are external mediators. These are people outside our personal network, such as celebrities and historical figures. The third kind of mediators are a mix of both internal and external mediators. We can find this kind of mediator in social media, because social media platforms create spaces where an external person has the potential to become internal in our life. We can follow and learn so much about people we don't know personally that the lines of reality become blurred. This is why some of my students feel like they're friends with Justin Bieber, because even though they have not met him in person, at one point they had an interaction where he retweeted or responded to their tweets. So, why are models important in character forming discipleship? Scripture contains elements of mimetic desire. For example, one of the goals of teaching is to produce disciples, and disciples are taught to emulate Christ. We see this in verses like Ephesians 5:1 and 2, which calls us to follow God's example by walking in love. And in verses like John 15:9-11, we hear Jesus talk about how he consciously imitates God's love. As Christians, Jesus is our ultimate model, especially when it comes to desires, character, and virtue. However, teenagers also benefit from having several examples of Christ-like models in their lives that they can learn from and emulate. So many of our actions come from imitating others. Imitation is a quick way to learn. Consider how we imitated our favorite artists or popular students at school when we were younger. Nowadays, you can tell if a teen is a Billie Eilish fan or a Taylor Swift fan because young people frequently imitate individuals they see as models. You might notice that students mimic their desire models by dressing like them, speaking like them, or even walking like them. Let's go back to the example of my sermon at the winter retreat. Many students saw me as an internal mediator. They heard my story, saw that I shared my vulnerability in a safe place, and saw how it gave me a sense of freedom. That in turn helped them desire vulnerability and freedom for themselves. That is why they began to share more openly with me, and why they learned to open up more with friends who make them feel safe and trusted. What I didn't realize at the time was that the senior pastor of their church had been modeling vulnerability long before I came to speak. He didn't just preach about the importance of being transparent with the church community. He also lived it out in front of the congregation and students. He would openly admit his errors and apologize to his staff and church. He discussed the complications of preaching on forgiveness when he still struggles to forgive his father for alcoholism and abuse. He spoke about the ways he felt he'd failed as a father and what he was doing to have stronger, better relationships with his children. It makes sense why this particular group of young people were open to vulnerability, because it was modeled for them. But how do we help our students find healthy models? Our role as youth workers is to be healthy internal mediators of desire, or to help young people find other internal mediators by assisting them to follow and model after other healthy adult disciples whose desires demonstrate Christ-likeness. In order to help our students identify people who can offer them healthy models, Burgess offers 2 questions. 1. Who embodies the lifestyle that I would most like to have? And 2. Other than my parents, who were the most important influences on me in my childhood? During the retreat, I spoke with each student who opened up about their identity struggles and worked with them to identify their current models. The student who was having body image issues named 2 models: the captain of his wrestling team and a bodybuilder he follows on Instagram. According to the student, these men had the physique that commanded respect and prestige. I asked him, if these models are supposed to inspire you, why do you think they've negatively impacted you? He answered with this.
The captain of the wrestling team is popular, but he doesn't really know I exist. We're not friends, so I feel like I have to go get strong and ripped just to be at his level and get noticed. And the bodybuilder is merely on Instagram and doesn't even know me.
Once he was aware of his models, I guided him to think of a healthy internal mediator. I asked him to think of some models who have a direct relationship with him and who also bring out a positive and healthier side of him. But it does not have to be. So I asked, do you know someone who is strong, has a good physique, has a healthy view of body image, and who might also embody both the faith and healthy lifestyle that you want to have? The student was able to identify his youth pastor, who also works as a physical trainer at a local gym. What do you like about your youth pastor? I asked. He said,
I like how disciplined he is going to the gym at 5 a.m. and with his physique by eating less sweets. I can tell he's still having fun and not letting it bother him.
I asked him, where do you think his healthy view of his body image comes from? The student replied,
I believe it stems with his faith in God. He says that he tries to honor God by staying healthy, and the fact that God loves him unconditionally takes the pressure off him to be swole.
I told him that was an interesting response and that perhaps he needed to hear it again for himself. I also suggested that if following the bodybuilder on Instagram made him feel bad about himself instead of inspiring him to get healthier, he might want to unfollow that person. So to recap, as youth leaders, we are models of character. Our students are paying attention to our actions and responses. More importantly, they're often coming to us confused or unsure of their own inner desires, wishes, and dreams. It's up to us to model Christ-like desires and narratives for them. In addition to being models of character, we can help young people identify other positive, healthy, and Christ-centered role models. And helping them identify healthy models is a step that can create incredible positive impact in their character development. By exemplifying Christ-like desires and narratives and helping them connect with other positive role models, we actively contribute to our students' personal growth and reinforce their faith foundation.
This podcast is one of the many free resources produced by the Fuller Youth Institute. You can find similar resources at fulleryouthinstitute.org/blog or in your inbox if you sign up for our newsletter. Check out the show notes for links to all the resources mentioned in today's episode. And thanks so much for listening. Finally, here is one more thought from a young person.
Other than your parents, who were your most important influences in your childhood and why?
I would say my Aunt Rachel, which is like a weird answer, but because I didn't like see her too much, because we would go and like visit her every Christmas. She was like funny and like seemed nice, and I just remember loving like her house and like all the Christmas things we did there. And also I just thought it was so cool that she had like a farm and like all the goats and all the chickens, and also she just seemed like really nice and a Christian and like open.